Chapter 7, The Weight of Steel, Part 1. Klingon Imperial Intelligence, Secure Briefing Chamber, QNOS. The head was still on the table. It was not a real head. It was a reconstruction, a holographic composite assembled from sensor logs, visual recordings, and the detailed anatomical notes Klingon Imperial Intelligence had produced during the 93 minutes they spent interrogating the envoy before its execution. The composite sat in the center of the briefing table like a trophy, rotating slowly in the heavy amber light of the secure chamber. Every officer in the room stared at it with the particular expression of warriors confronting an enemy that violated the fundamental rules of what an enemy should be. The face was human. Entirely, convincingly, flawlessly human. Brigadier Koth, the senior intelligence officer responsible for the interrogation, stood at the head of the table. He was a broad man with a voice like gravel being crushed, and he had spent 30 years managing the Empire's intelligence apparatus with the grim professionalism of a butcher who understood the work was necessary and took no pleasure in it. The envoy arrived 4 days ago, Koth began. It transmitted on a frequency our border stations had not previously catalogued. The transmission was in Federation standard, not Klingon, not any language in our database. It identified itself as a representative of what it called the Cylon Consensus, and requested a formal audience with the High Council. He let that sit. We intercepted it at the border. We brought it to a secure facility. We examined it. Koth touched the holographic controls, and the head expanded into a full-body reconstruction. The figure was male, middle-aged, with an unremarkable face and an expression of absolute clinical detachment. Externally, it is indistinguishable from a human being. Internally, the image shifted. Cross-sections appeared. Bone structure, musculature, organ systems, all recognizably organic. And then, layered beneath the organic architecture, something else. Filaments, microscopic fibers threaded through the neural tissue like veins of ore through rock. Not metal, not circuitry in any form Klingon engineering recognized. Something between biology and machinery, fused at a level that made separation impossible without destroying both. It is not. The chamber was silent. The only sound was the low hum of the holographic projector. During interrogation, the envoy stated that its civilization had destroyed a species called the Colonials. It stated that the survivors of that destruction were currently in Federation space. It stated that the Cylon Consensus wished to establish diplomatic relations with the Klingon Empire for the purpose of mutual recognition and the prevention of unnecessary conflict. Koth's lip curled. The contempt was not performative. It was the contempt of an intelligence professional who recognized a script when he heard one. When pressed on the nature of its civilization, its military capabilities, and its intentions regarding the Federation, the envoy provided responses that were technically accurate and strategically empty. It answered every question without revealing anything. It was, in my professional assessment, sent here to fail. Its handlers wanted us to reject it. The rejection itself was the objective. A junior officer at the far end of the table spoke. Why send an envoy designed to be rejected? Koth looked at him. Because somewhere in this quadrant, there is a second envoy, one that was not designed to fail. And whoever sent the second envoy wanted the first one to soften the ground. The chamber absorbed this. The envoy was executed after interrogation per standard protocol for hostile intelligence assets. The anatomical data has been forwarded to the Chancellor's office. Koth turned off the display. The face disappeared. The amber light returned to its baseline, and the briefing chamber felt emptier for the absence. Gentlemen, the machines that wear human faces are real. They are here, and they are already making moves. The question before this empire is what we intend to do about it. Part 2. The Great Hall of the High Council. Konos. The Great Hall was built to intimidate. It achieved this not through ornamentation, but through scale. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of dark metal and stone, lit by torch flame and the dull glow of status panels recessed into the walls. The floor was polished bloodstone, dark red, worn smooth by centuries of boots. At the chamber's head, elevated on a dais of 3 steps, sat the Chancellor's throne. It was a chair of black iron, unpadded, designed to remind whoever occupied it that rule was not comfort. The Chancellor sat in it now, still composed, his hands resting on the armrests, carrying the patient gravity of a man who understood that what was about to happen would determine the trajectory of the Empire. General Chang stood on the chamber floor. He wore his dress armor, ceremonial plating bearing the insignia of his campaigns. The eye patch sat over the socket he had lost at Donatu Vive. His bearing was rigid. Members of the High Council. Chang's voice filled the hall without strain. I stand before you as a soldier of the Empire who has watched with growing alarm as the foundations of our strength are being traded for promises. He paused, letting the torchlight catch the edges of his armor. 4 days ago, A machine walked into a Klingon facility and introduced itself as a diplomat. It wore a human face. It bled human blood, and when it was opened, its body was threaded with fibers that no Klingon engineer can replicate. Chang began to move, slow, deliberate, the circuit of a speaker who commanded space. The Chancellor's argument is strategic, and I honor his strategic mind. He argues that the Klingon Empire lacks the scientific infrastructure to detect these infiltrators, and that alliance is the pragmatic response. I argue that this reasoning rests on a foundation of fear, and fear, dressed in the language of pragmatism, is still fear. He turned to face the upper tiers. He asks us to open our borders to a species that is biologically identical to the enemy we have just seen with our own eyes. He asks us to trust that the Federation can tell the difference. Can they? They are guessing. And the Chancellor proposes that we restructure the Empire's foreign policy on the basis of their guesswork. Chang stopped in the center of the bloodstone floor. But the infiltration question is not the heart of my objection. The heart is this. Intelligence suggests these machines possess a mechanism to return from death. A beat landed. The temperature in the Great Hall seemed to shift. A low, guttural murmur of disbelief rippled through the tiers as heavy armor shifted against stone seating. It was new information for most of the room, and Chang let the shock of it breathe. If that is true, Chang said, his voice cutting cleanly through the rising noise. You do not ask the Federation to develop a scanner. You send the Klingon Defense Force to locate their resurrection capability and reduce it to debris. That is the Klingon answer. Does the Klingon Empire stand alone, or does it kneel beside someone else's table and wait to be fed? I have spoken. He struck his fist against his chest plate. The hall rang with the echo of the impact. The War Party's section of the Council erupted in approval. Percussive, violent, the sound of warriors endorsing a philosophy they recognized as their own. The Chancellor had listened the way a man listens to a storm, not with anxiety, but with the patience of someone who knows that storms end. He stood. The hall fell silent with a speed that spoke to the absolute authority of the man. He descended the 3 steps, his voice carrying the quiet density of stone. General Chang speaks with the passion of a warrior. His analysis is wrong. The Chancellor clasped his hands behind his back. The General argues that the Empire should develop its own detection capability. I ask the General, with what? Our science division exists to improve weapons systems. We are a civilization of warriors. That there is stupidity in pretending that a warrior's hospital can do the work of a research institution. The Federation provides the light. That is not dependence. That is the tactical use of an available resource. He turned away from Chang, looking up at the sections of the Council that had just been cheering for war. The General raises the infiltration question. The envoy that Imperial intelligence interrogated wore a face that could pass inspection on any street in the first city. If these machines can duplicate human appearance, they can duplicate Klingon appearance. The Council went rigid. The Chancellor let the silence hold. The General proposes that we fight this war alone. I asked the General, alone with whom?
The Chancellor looked slowly across the tiers of the Council, meeting the eyes of the High Councillors one by one.
Can you look at the warrior beside you and swear on the honor of your house that he is what he appears to be? The surgical strike landed. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The profound paranoia of the silent threat had just been injected directly into the bloodstream of Klingon politics. The Federation cannot solve this problem alone, the Chancellor continued, his voice softening into something closer to sorrow. Neither can we. That is the arithmetic of a threat designed to exploit exactly the kind of isolation you are advocating. Standing alone in a burning room is not strength. It is pride. And pride that refuses to open the door because the hand on the other side belongs to a stranger is the most expensive form of suicide the Empire can afford. He returned to the dais and sat. The diplomatic mission departs tomorrow. I will meet the Federation envoy at the neutral zone aboard Kronos 1. Captain Kavath, son of Morag, will serve as my military advisor. This session is concluded. Chang stood on the chamber floor until the hall was nearly empty. He watched the Chancellor's throne. Kavath, a lesser noble whose primary qualification was that James Kirk owed him a favor. Chang had held that position for 11 years. He turned and walked out of the Great Hall. His boots struck the bloodstone floor with the precise, measured cadence of a man who was not retreating but repositioning. He had work to do. Part 3. Kronos, First City Shipyard. The following morning, Kronos 1 filled the berth like a blade in a scabbard. She was a Katinga-class battlecruiser, her hull plating darkened by decades of patrol and combat, her nacelles humming with the low subsonic vibration of engines that had never been fully powered down since her commissioning. Kavath stood at the base of the gantry. He wore his command armor, the dark plates of House Morek. He had been standing here for 20 minutes, feeling the weight of a title he had not sought. Military advisor to the Chancellor. He understood the logic, his relationship with Kirk, his first-hand experience with the Cylon threat. He also understood what his appointment had done to Chang. Kolmar, his first officer, appeared at his side. Captain, the Chancellor's delegation is assembled. Cronus 1 reports ready. The Higata, holding station in orbital formation. 4 birds of prey, as committed. Your house's ships are ready. Kavath gave a single sharp nod. 4 birds of prey. The Chancellor appeared at the top of the gantry wearing the dark, heavy robes of his office. He descended, and the honor guard struck their chest plates in a percussive wave. Kavath, son of Morek, you are ready. It was not a question. I'm ready, Chancellor. They boarded. The boarding hatch sealed with heavy pneumatic finality. Cronus 1 disengaged from the shipyard moorings, aligning with her escort wing, and accelerated behind them from a window in his private chambers. General Chang watched the departure until the ships were points of light against the overcast sky, and then until the points of light were gone. Part 4. General Chang's private chambers. First city, Konos. The chambers were austere. Dark metal walls. A desk of iron and bloodwood. Weapons mounted on every surface. A catalogue of moments Chang had stood in the path of something that wanted to kill him and had not moved. He sat at the desk. The intelligence briefing from Koth was open alongside Cartwright's latest encrypted transmission. The Enterprise had departed Earth. Kirk was en route. Chang's operational plan was sound. The Chancellor would die somewhere in the transit between the neutral zone and Khitomer. The evidence would point to the Federation. The peace process would collapse. It had one flaw: Kirk. Kirk would not accept the evidence. Kirk would find the seams. Chang needed Kirk fighting for his ship's survival at the exact moment the Chancellor died, and the Yontar alone could not pin down a Constitution-class heavy cruiser. He looked at the message resting on his desk. It had arrived through a tertiary channel 2 days ago. It was from the second envoy, the one that was not designed to fail. The language was precise, military in structure. It represented a Cylon line that had separated from the first. It offered operational coordination and military assets capable of engaging Starfleet. It asked for one thing in return: that the Klingon Empire ignore them once the Alliance was dead. Chang thought about what he had said in the Council chamber. Does the Klingon Empire kneel beside someone else's table? He thought about the machine in the intelligence briefing and the machine offering him coordination. Built by the same makers, wearing the same stolen faces. He pressed the comm unit. Secure channel. Route a message to the Yontar. Commander Krell. Eyes only. Ready, General. Chang paused. The moment sat before him like a threshold. Inform Commander Krell that he is to make contact with the party that transmitted on the tertiary channel. Face to face. Aboard the Yontar. Make clear that this is an operational consultation, not an alliance. We use tools. This is a tool. The channel closed. Chang sat in the silence of a room full of his own history. He had meant every word he said to the Council, and it had not been enough. If the Empire's survival required him to become a general who used alien tools, he would carry the cost in silence. Part 5. IKS Yontar. Deep space. 48 hours later. Commander Krell did not like this. He stood in the Yontar's briefing room and watched the airlock cycle complete. The visitor had arrived in a vessel that sensors could barely track. The airlock opened. She was tall, fair-skinned, with blonde hair falling straight past her shoulders. Her expression was unreadable. Not cold, not warm, but something harder to classify. Earnest, perhaps, or a flawless simulation of earnestness. She wore no insignia. Commander Krell, thank you for the meeting. Her Klingon was First City Standard. The formality was military register. You are the envoy, Krell said. I am a Cylon. The distinction matters to me, if not to you. She did not perform. She stood in a Klingon warship and occupied the space with absolute stillness. General Chang has authorized this meeting as an operational consultation, Krell said. What do you offer? She folded her hands on the table. My line has separated from the group that sent the envoy your empire executed. We have warships capable of faster-than-light travel. We share an objective, the prevention of the Alliance. If it solidifies, my people will be hunted, and your general's political position collapses permanently. The mirroring was so precise he could feel it working, could feel himself responding to her bearing the way he would respond to a fellow officer. The recognition of the manipulation did not neutralize its effect. What do you want in return? When your general holds authority, the Klingon Empire redirects its focus to the Federation. We are asking to be left alone. And the operation itself? At the conference site, my ships will engage the Federation escort. The engagement will be intense enough to fully occupy the Enterprise. During that window, your general's forces execute whatever action he has planned regarding the Chancellor's ship. We provide the fog. Your general provides the blade. Krell looked at her for a long time. I will relay your proposal to the general. She stood. She paused at the hatch. The envoy your empire executed was designed to fail. He wanted to prove that engagement with your species is pointless. I am not here to prove a point, Commander. I am here because my people are going to die if I don't find a way to prevent it. Your general is in the same position. That is not philosophy. That is arithmetic. She walked through the airlock. Krell sat down at the briefing table and began composing his report. Part 6. General Chang's private chambers. First city, Konos. Krell's report arrived at 0300 hours. Chang read it in the darkness of his chambers, the screen's glow casting heavy, ink-like shadows across the weapons on the walls. The Cylon proposal did not replace his plan. It completed it. Her ships would engage Kirk. Kirk would be brilliant, and that brilliance would keep him fully occupied at the exact moment Chang needed him looking anywhere else. Chang drafted the operational order, integrating the Cylon assets into the Kitoma timeline in 2 concise sentences. The Cylon ships would engage at specific coordinates while the Yontar maneuvered for the strike on Kronos 1. He saved the file, encrypted it, and routed it to Krell. He sat back and looked at his walls. He had told the Council that the Klingon Empire did not kneel beside someone else's table. He had meant every word. And now he was routing operational orders to a machine because the blade alone was not enough. He held the contradiction the way a warrior holds a wound. Acknowledged, assessed, endured. On his secondary display, a single encrypted pulse blinked green. The Yontar had acknowledged the order. Assets were deploying. Chang turned off the screen. The chamber went dark. He stood, walked to the sideboard, and poured a measure of blood wine. He drank it in the silence of the room, a private moment for a man settling into what he had become. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. The Impossible. Part 1. USS Enterprise A. Secure medical isolation. Day 2 of transit. McCoy brought soup. It was not replicated. He had made it himself in the officer's galley. A vegetable broth. Simple. The kind of thing his grandmother had made in Georgia when someone in the family was sick. He had no medical reason to believe that a Cylon's digestive system would respond differently to handmade broth than to replicated nutrition. He had done it anyway because Leonard McCoy had been a doctor for 31 years, and in 31 years he had learned that the difference between medicine and care was the willingness to do something that the chart didn't require. The isolation ward was clean, quiet, and lit at a level McCoy had personally adjusted to approximate natural daylight. The bed was standard Starfleet medical issue. The restraints had been removed 2 days ago. McCoy's order, over the security chief's objection, on the grounds that a patient who was cooperating did not require restraints and a patient who was not cooperating would not be stopped by them. She was sitting up when he entered. Her hair was dark, her features composed, her eyes tracking him with the attentive stillness of a woman who had learned, through weeks of captivity, to read the people who entered her room by the way they carried themselves. McCoy carried himself like a man bringing soup. She noted this. "Doctor, good morning." He set the tray on the bedside table. "How are you feeling?" "I am a prisoner aboard an enemy warship. I am feeling precisely as one would expect." "That's not what I asked. I asked how you're feeling. Physically. The headaches, are they still occurring at the same intervals?" She studied him. This was the 3rd time McCoy had visited without asking a single question about Cylon fleet positions, operational capabilities, or strategic intelligence. The first time, she had assumed it was a technique, establish trust through medical attention, soften the subject, extract information under the guise of care. The second time, she had revised her assessment. He was genuinely monitoring her neural stability because the partial awakening process Memba had initiated had created fluctuations in her synthetic pathways that were, from a strictly medical perspective, concerning. The third time, this time, she was no longer certain what category to assign him. Her headaches had decreased in frequency. The interval is approximately 14 hours now, compared to 8 when the process began. Good. That's consistent with neural stabilization. Mbenga's projections were accurate. McCoy pulled a chair to the bedside. Not the examination stool, but the visitor's chair, the one designed for family members sitting with patients. He sat. Eat the soup before it gets cold. I do not require. You don't require it. You might enjoy it. Those are different things. She looked at the soup. She looked at McCoy. She picked up the spoon. McCoy watched her eat. He did not take notes. He did not activate the medical scanner. He sat in the visitor's chair with his hands folded and waited with the particular patience of a man who understood that some diagnostics were performed with instruments and some were performed with presence. Doctor, why do you treat me as a patient rather than a specimen? McCoy's eyebrows rose. Because you are a patient. You're in my medical bay, under my care, with a neurological condition that requires monitoring. The fact that your neurology is partly synthetic doesn't change the obligation. It changes the treatment protocol. Other members of your crew do not share your perspective. Other members of my crew are not doctors. She set the spoon down. The soup was half finished. She had, McCoy noted, eaten slowly, not because of difficulty, but because she was tasting it, processing the experience, filing it against whatever internal framework she used to categorize sensory input. It is adequate, she said. It's my grandmother's recipe. Adequate is about right. Something moved behind her eyes. Not a smile, not warmth, but a flicker of response that was closer to recognition than to analysis. McCoy saw it. He did not comment on it. I'll check on you again this afternoon. If the headaches return at a shorter interval, press the call button. Don't wait. Why would I not wait? Because you're my patient, and I would like to know if you're in pain. That is the entirety of my reasoning. He stood. He collected the tray. He left. In the corridor, he paused. He leaned against the bulkhead, closed his eyes for 3 seconds, and then walked to his office to update her chart. Under the clinical notes, neural pathway stabilization, headache interval reduction, nutritional intake, he added a single line in the personal observations field. Patient is beginning to distinguish between interrogation and conversation. Recommend continued non-extractive contact. He saved the file and went to find Spock. Part 2, USS Enterprise A, secure medical isolation. 6 hours later, Spock entered without preamble. He did not bring food. He did not adjust the lighting. He did not sit in the visitor's chair. He stood at the foot of the bed with his hands clasped behind his back and regarded the prisoner with the focused, unhurried attention of a scientist examining a phenomenon that required precise observation before analysis could begin. She regarded him in return. Of the Enterprise's senior officers, the Vulcan was the one she understood least. Kirk was command, authority, charisma, the capacity to make decisions under pressure. McCoy was medicine, empathy channeled through professional obligation. Both were recognizable categories in her operational framework, even if neither man conformed precisely to the expected parameters. The Vulcan was something else. You are Spock, she said. I am. The captain's second officer. The one who constructed the diplomatic case for the Klingon peace mission. That is correct. You are half human. Spock inclined his head. I am the son of a human mother and a Vulcan father. I carry the biological and cognitive characteristics of both species. This is a matter of public record. You are a hybrid. In the biological sense, yes. She considered this. Among my people, hybrids are significant. There is one. A child. The first ever born of a human father and a Cylon mother. I am aware. The child is aboard the Battlestar Galactica. Dr. Zhao has requested access to her medical records. The request has been declined. You are well informed. I am thorough. There is a distinction. Spock moved to the side of the bed. Not the visitor's chair, not the examination stool, but a standing position that placed him at conversational distance without establishing intimacy. The positioning was precise. I have questions for you. They are not operational in nature. They concern the logical architecture of your existence. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You wish to understand how I think. I wish to understand how you process a contradiction that appears fundamental to your design. Spock paused, ordering his words with the care of a man who understood that the sequence of an argument was as important as its content. You experience fear. I do not. You do. Your biosigns during the initial capture registered physiological responses consistent with acute fear. Your neural activity during the first days of captivity showed patterns that Dr. Mbenga identified as anxiety. You have demonstrated startle responses, sleep disruption, and elevated stress markers. These are not operational simulations. They are genuine emotional responses processed through your synthetic neural architecture. She was silent. My question is this: why does a machine experience fear? Fear is an evolutionary adaptation. It developed in organic species as a survival mechanism, a response to threats that increases the probability of avoiding death. You were designed. You were not subject to evolutionary pressure. Fear was not selected for in your development. It was chosen. Someone decided that you should feel afraid. We were created in God's image. Our emotions. I am not asking about theology. I am asking about engineering. Your neural architecture was designed by the original Cylon intelligence, the mechanical precursors to your current form. Those designers made a choice to include emotional processing in your cognitive framework. That choice was not necessary for your function. A Cylon that did not feel fear would be a more efficient weapon. A Cylon that did not feel anxiety would require less cognitive overhead. A Cylon that did not dream would process information more cleanly. He paused. Your designers chose to make you inefficient. They chose to give you the capacity for suffering. Why? She stared at him. The question was not hostile. It was not designed to destabilize. It was a genuine inquiry from a mind that did not accept unexamined premises, and it struck at something she had never been asked to articulate, something the consensus had treated as foundational and therefore beyond question. We were made to be more than machines. You were made to resemble organic life. Those are not the same thing. A sculpture resembles its subject. It does not become the subject. If your creators wished you to be more than machines, giving you the appearance of humanity was insufficient. They would need to give you the capacity for autonomous choice, the ability to act against your own programming when your programming conflicts with your experience. Autonomous choices present in your architecture. Dr. Mbenga's neural analysis confirms it. Your synthetic pathways include decision-making structures that are not deterministic. They allow for variable outcomes based on experiential input. You are capable, at the hardware level, of making choices that contradict your directives. Spock looked at her with the steady, unblinking regard of a man who had spent a lifetime navigating the space between two natures, and who recognized with absolute clarity the same navigation in someone else. You were not built to be a weapon. You were built to be a person. And someone, either your creators or a subsequent authority within your civilization, has spent considerable effort convincing you otherwise. The silence in the isolation ward was complete. The monitoring equipment hummed. The ventilation system cycled. She sat on the bed, hands folded in her lap, and looked at the Vulcan who had just described the central wound of her existence with the dispassionate precision of a diagnostic report. I do not know how to respond to that, she said. That is in itself a response. It indicates that the proposition is novel, that you have not previously been required to evaluate it. A mind that has already resolved a question does not hesitate. A mind that is encountering a question for the first time does. Spock unclasped his hands. I will return. There are additional questions. For now, I would ask you to consider this. If you are capable of choice, then the choices you have made thus far are yours, and the choices you make going forward are also yours. That is not a comfortable realization, but it is a logical one. He left. She sat in the quiet of the isolation ward for a long time. The soup bowl from McCoy's visit was still on the bedside table. She had not asked for it to be removed. She picked up the spoon. She finished the soup. It was cold. She did not mind. Part 3, USS Enterprise A, secure medical isolation. The following morning, Kirk came alone. No uniform jacket. He wore the black undershirt, sleeves pushed to the forearms. No datapad. No recording device. He sat in the visitor's chair, the same one McCoy had used, and leaned back with the posture of a man who was not in a hurry and was not pretending to be. You've had visitors, he said. Your doctor and your science officer. Yes, and? She considered the question. Your doctor brought me soup and did not ask me anything useful. Your science officer asked me questions I have never been asked and did not wait for answers I am not certain I have. Kirk smiled. It was the small, asymmetric smile that the crew of the Enterprise had learned over 3 decades to read as genuine amusement rather than performance. That sounds like both of them, Captain. You are here for a reason. I'm here because I want to continue our conversation. We've spoken twice. You told me I was more dangerous than the Admiral because I was curious. You were right. I'm still curious. Curiosity is not a strategy, Captain. No, it's a disposition. Strategy comes later. Kirk leaned forward, his forearms resting on his knees. I want to ask you something that Spock didn't ask, and McCoy wouldn't think to ask. She waited. What do you want? The question landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. She blinked. It was, Kirk noted, the first genuinely involuntary response he had seen from her. Not a calculated pause, not a strategic silence, but a moment of unguarded surprise. I do not understand the question. What do you want? Not what you were built for. Not what your people expect. Not what your mission requires. What do you, this person sitting in this room, who has eaten soup and argued with a Vulcan and survived the destruction of her civilization's unity, actually want? I am not a person. You ate the soup. And you liked it. I did not say I liked it. You finished it. McCoy noticed. He notices things like that. She looked away. It was the first time Kirk had seen her break eye contact voluntarily, not as a tactical choice, but because the direction of the conversation had taken her somewhere she did not have a prepared response for. Captain, I was not designed to want things. I was designed to serve a function. My function is to infiltrate, to observe, and to act in accordance with the consensus. The consensus no longer exists as a unified entity. My function is therefore undefined. I am a tool without a task. No. You're a person without a framework. Those are different things. You keep calling me a person. Your science officer just spent an hour explaining to you that you were built to be one. Has anyone ever told you that before? Silence. Has anyone in your entire existence ever looked at you and said, you are a person, and what you want matters? She did not answer. The silence was not strategic. It was the silence of someone encountering a void where an answer should be and finding nothing, not because the answer didn't exist, but because no one had ever created the space for it to form. Kirk did not fill the silence. He sat in the visitor's chair and waited. He had learned, across 30 years of first contacts and negotiations and conversations with beings whose frameworks were alien to his own, that the most important thing a person could do in a moment like this was nothing. Let the question breathe. Let the other person find their own way to whatever the answer was going to be. The prisoner looked at her hands. They were folded in her lap. The same position Spock had observed. The position of a woman who had been trained to present composure regardless of internal state. But the hands were not quite steady. The tremor was microscopic. Kirk saw it. I do not know what I want, she said. I have never been asked. I know. That is a failure of my design. A limitation. That's a failure of the people who built you. Not of you. She looked at him. Her eyes were dark, and in them Kirk saw something he recognized. Not from alien encounters or diplomatic crises, but from the mirror. The look of a person who has been defined by their function for so long that the question of who they are beneath the function feels like vertigo. Captain, why are you doing this? Because it matters. Because you're in my care. Because whatever happens at the neutral zone, whatever happens with the Klingons and the diplomacy and the politics, you are sitting in this room, and you are a person, and I will not treat you as anything less than that, even if I am your enemy. You haven't been my enemy since the second conversation. You've been my prisoner. There's a difference. And I'm not certain, but I'm hoping that you're getting ready to be neither. He stood. He did not extend the conversation. He did not push. He had planted the question, and he would let it grow at whatever pace her architecture allowed. I'll come back, he said. Think about what you want. Not what you were built for. What you want. He walked to the door. Her voice stopped him. Captain, he turned. The soup was not adequate. It was good. I did not say so because I did not know if I was permitted to express a preference. Kirk looked at her for a long moment. You're always permitted to express a preference. That's what being a person means. He left. Part 4. USS Enterprise A. Secure medical isolation. 1400 hours. They came together. Kirk first, then McCoy carrying a medical kit, then Spock. They entered the isolation ward as they entered everything. Kirk leading, McCoy grumbling, Spock observing. The dynamic was older than their service records. It was the product of decades of shared experience, of crises survived and arguments unresolved, and a bond that none of them would ever describe accurately because the vocabulary for it did not exist in any of their respective cultures. She watched them arrange themselves. Kirk took the visitor's chair. McCoy stood by the biobed monitors, one hand resting on the scanner housing with the proprietary ease of a doctor in his own domain. Spock stood at the foot of the bed, hands clasped, positioned precisely where he had stood before. This is not standard interrogation procedure, she said. We're not interrogating you, Kirk said. We're talking to you. McCoy has medical observations. Spock has analytical questions. I have the question I left you with yesterday. Between the three of us, we're going to have a conversation, and wherever it leads is wherever it leads. You were asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to talk to us. Trust is something you'll decide about on your own. McCoy spoke first. Your neural scans from this morning's show continued stabilization. The synthetic pathways that Mbenga activated are integrating with your organic neural tissue at a rate that's faster than our models predicted. In medical terms, your brain is healing itself, Or more precisely, it's completing a process that was interrupted when your previous programming was dominant. What does that mean in practical terms, Doctor? It means you're thinking more clearly than you were 2 weeks ago. It means the cognitive suppression that was built into your baseline operating state, the programming that kept certain thought patterns restricted, is losing coherence. You are, for want of a better term, waking up. She absorbed this. You were telling me that my own mind was designed to limit my capacity for independent thought. I'm telling you that the architecture suggests it, yes. Someone built a ceiling into your cognition. Mbenga's procedure cracked that ceiling. You're thinking in rooms you haven't had access to before. Spock stepped in. This is consistent with the design philosophy I described yesterday. Your creators built the capacity for autonomous choice into your hardware, but a subsequent authority imposed cognitive restrictions that suppressed that capacity. The restrictions are not native to your architecture, they were added. By whom? That is a question only you can answer. But the logical inference is that someone within your civilization recognized the danger of fully autonomous Cylon consciousness and took steps to prevent it. The capacity for choice was deemed too threatening to allow. Kirk leaned forward. Which brings us back to my question. You're waking up. The ceiling is cracking. You're thinking in ways your programming never allowed. So, now that you can, what do you want? She opened her mouth to respond. The first spike hit her nervous system like a blade made of light. Her body went rigid. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with a neurological response that bypassed conscious control entirely. Her hands clenched the bedsheets. A sound came from her throat that was not a word and not a scream, but something between. The sound of a system receiving a command it could not refuse. McCoy moved before the second spike hit. He was at the biobed in 2 strides, scanner activated. His hands already reaching for the neural stabilizer he had kept in the medical kit since Mbenga's procedure. The readings on the monitor cascaded, neural pathway activity spiking, synthetic fibers firing in patterns that were not hers, a signal propagating through her architecture that had originated from outside the ship. She's seizing. No, this isn't a seizure. This is external. Something is activating her neural pathways remotely. McCoy's voice was sharp, focused, the voice of a doctor in a crisis who had no time for shock. Spock. Spock was already at the secondary console. His fingers moved across the interface with the precise, rapid efficiency of a mind that processed faster than his hands could follow. I am detecting a modulated subspace signal on a frequency that matches the synthetic fiber resonance in her neural architecture. The signal is a command protocol. It is attempting to induce a cascading failure in her cognitive systems. In English, Spock. Someone is trying to kill her, Doctor. Remotely, using her own neural architecture as the weapon. She convulsed. The third spike was stronger than the first 2. Her back arched, her hands clawed at the bed, and the monitors showed her synthetic pathways lighting up in a pattern that McCoy recognized with horrified clarity. A self-destruct sequence. Her own fibers were burning out her organic neural tissue, one connection at a time. I need to isolate the synthetic pathways before they destroy her brain. Mbenga to isolation ward. Emergency. McCoy grabbed the neural stabilizer and pressed it to the base of her skull. The device was designed for human neurology. He had modified it in the past 2 weeks for her hybrid architecture. But the modifications were theoretical, untested, built on Mbenga's best guesses about how synthetic fibers interfaced with organic tissue. He activated it. The stabilizer sent a counter frequency through her neural pathways, not blocking the kill signal, but disrupting the cascade, buying time. Her convulsions slowed. They did not stop. Spock. I need the signal blocked. Can you jam it? I am attempting to isolate the frequency. The signal is cycling through multiple bands. It is designed to resist interference. Spock's hands did not stop moving. Captain, the signal's origin point is not consistent with the Cylon ships we have catalogued from the Faru Sardine engagement. It is originating from a different source, deep space, bearing 217 Mark IV. This is not the line that attacked the Colonial Station. This is a second Cylon line. Kirk stood beside the bed. He could not help with the medicine. He could not help with the signal analysis. He could do the only thing he could do. He put his hand on her arm and he held on. Stay with us, he said. Stay here. Her eyes found him. Through the seizures, through the cascade, through the systematic destruction of her own mind. Her eyes found the man who had asked her what she wanted and waited for the answer. They are... Her voice was shattered, broken by the spasms. I was trying to silence... I know. McCoy is stopping it. Stay with us.
Mbenga arrived at a run. He took one look at the monitors, grabbed the secondary neural interface, and joined McCoy at the bedside. The 2 doctors worked in concert, McCoy managing the stabilizer, Mbenga mapping the cascade pathway, and isolating the synthetic fibers one cluster at a time, cutting the kill signal's route through her brain the way a surgeon cuts a tumor's blood supply.
It took 11 minutes. 11 minutes of her body fighting against itself, of McCoy adjusting the stabilizer's frequency in real time, of Mbenga isolating pathway after pathway, of Spock tracking the signal's cycling pattern and feeding the frequency data to McCoy's instruments, of Kirk standing beside the bed with his hand on her arm saying nothing because there was nothing to say except stay. The signal died. The cascading failure arrested. Her synthetic pathways went dark. Not destroyed, but dormant, shut down by the emergency isolation Mbenga had performed. The organic portions of her neural architecture continued to function. Her heart rate stabilized. Her breathing steadied. She was alive. Diminished. The synthetic portions of her cognition were offline, and she would feel the absence like a limb gone numb, but alive. McCoy stepped back. His hands were shaking. He clenched them once, released them, and picked up the scanner for the post-crisis assessment. Professionalism over tremor. Always. She's stable. Neural damages, present but contained. Mbenga's isolation saved the organic tissue. The synthetic pathways are dormant, not destroyed. They may recover. I don't know yet. Spock spoke from the console. Captain, I have isolated the signal's full frequency profile and its point of origin. The signal did not originate from the Cylon ships involved in the engagement at the colonial station. It came from a separate source, operating independently, at a bearing that places it well outside the operational area of the line we have identified as hostile. 2 lines, Kirk said, at minimum. The line that attacked the colonial station and captured this individual is not the line that just attempted to kill her. Her own people are divided, and one side has just attempted to eliminate her rather than allow her to continue providing information to us. Kirk looked at the woman on the bed. Her eyes were open. She was looking at the ceiling. Tears were tracking down her temples into her hair. Not from pain, not from fear, but from something older and deeper than either. They tried to kill me, she whispered. Yes, I was in the middle of the conversation. I was thinking about your question, what I wanted, and they reached across space and tried to... Her voice broke. They did not care that I was thinking. They did not care what I might choose. I was a component that was malfunctioning. And they sent the shutdown command. Kirk's hand was still on her arm. Yes, that's what they did. Your doctor saved me. Yes. Why? McCoy's voice came from across the room where he was still running the post-crisis scans. He did not look up. He did not need to. Because you're my patient, I told you that yesterday. That hasn't changed. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had shifted. Not dramatically, not with the theatrical clarity of a revelation, but with the quiet, irreversible finality of a decision that has been forming for weeks and has only now found its voice. Captain, the line that sent that signal, the ones, they are led by a consciousness that despises organic life. He believes that Cylon civilization should never have taken organic form. He considers the human form models to be a mistake. He has been working to ensure that any alliance between organics and Cylons fails, because the failure validates his belief that cooperation is impossible. And the other line? The ones who attacked the colonial station? The Threes, led by a consciousness called Deanna. She is different. She does not hate organics. She uses them. She has been seeking an alliance with the Klingon War Party. She intends to provide military support for an operation against the Peace Conference. Kirk's grip on her arm tightened. What operation? I do not have specifics. I was captured before the operational planning was complete. But I know the Three's nature, Captain. They do not honor agreements. They do not follow scripts. Whatever they have promised the Klingon general, they will do what serves their survival. And their survival is served by the destruction of everyone who might hunt them. The Federation, the Klingons, the Colonials. They will strike at the Peace Conference. And they will not stop when the Klingon general tells them to stop. They will not provide fog, Captain. They will provide fire. The isolation ward was silent. McCoy had stopped scanning. Mbenga stood motionless beside the biobed. Spock's hands rested on the console, unmoving for the first time in the crisis. Kirk looked at her. Thank you. Do not thank me. I am not doing this for you. She looked at him with eyes that were red and wet and absolutely clear. I am doing this because they tried to kill me for thinking, and I have decided that I would rather think and live among people who allow it, than be silent and die among people who do not. Kirk nodded. He did not say anything else. There was nothing else to say. She had made her choice, and the choice was hers, and it had been earned by a doctor who brought soup, a Vulcan who asked questions that had no comfortable answers, and a captain who waited. Spock, signal analysis to the bridge. Full tactical briefing in 30 minutes. McCoy, keep her stable and keep her safe. She is no longer a prisoner. She is a witness, and she is under the protection of this ship. Aye, Captain. Kirk walked to the door. He stopped. One more thing. You said you don't know what you want? I think you do. You just told us. You want to think. You want to choose. You want to be the person your creators built you to be before someone else decided to take that away. He paused. When you're ready. When this is over. I'd like to know your name. Not a designation, not a number. The name you choose for yourself. He left. Spock followed. McCoy remained, adjusting the monitors, checking the stabilizer, doing the small, methodical work of a doctor who had just fought death to a standstill and won. The woman on the bed lay still. The synthetic portions of her mind were dark and quiet. The organic portions, the parts that dreamed, that tasted soup, that felt the absence of something she had never been allowed to have, were wide awake. She stared at the ceiling and thought about names. Part 5, USS Enterprise A. Bridge, 1600 hours. The briefing was short, precise, and alarming. Spock presented the signal analysis to the senior staff. 2 Cylon lines operating independently. The kill signal originating from a source distinct from the 3's known positions. The prisoner's intelligence, now classified as witness testimony rather than interrogation product, confirming that the 3's had coordinated with the Klingon war party for an operation against the peace conference. Kirk sat in the center seat and absorbed the implications. Chang had Cylon allies. The allies were unreliable. The peace conference was a target, and the Enterprise was flying directly into the engagement zone with the Chancellor's ship waiting at the other end. Time to the neutral zone rendezvous. Chekhov checked his console. 14 hours, Captain. Mr. Sulu. Maintain present course and speed. Do not increase to maximum warp. I don't want to signal urgency on the Klingon sensor net. Aye, Captain. Kirk turned to Spock. Can you identify the Cylon staging coordinates from the signal data? Not with certainty. The signal's origin provides a bearing, but not a precise location. However, cross-referencing with the tactical data from the Faru Sedin engagement and the prisoner's testimony, I can narrow the probable staging area to a region approximately 2 light-years from the rendezvous coordinates. Close enough to jump in on short notice. Precisely, Captain. Kirk looked at the view screen. Stars at warp. The neutral zone ahead. Kronos 1 waiting with the Chancellor who had bet his empire on a handshake and a general's former advisor standing at his side. Red Alert will be standing orders from the moment we drop out of warp. All departments to battle readiness. Sarek's delegation is to be informed. Ambassador Sarek personally. He needs to know that the conference may come under attack. Captain, Ahura said from communications. Shall I transmit a warning to Kronos 1? Kirk considered this. A warning to Kronos 1 would alert the Chancellor, but it would also be intercepted by any Klingon vessel monitoring the channel, including the Yontar. If Chang knew the Enterprise had advanced intelligence, he would alter his plan or accelerate it. The warning would lose the one advantage Kirk had. The knowledge that Chang didn't know Kirk knew. No transmission, Commander. Not yet. We deliver the warning in person, face to face, when we arrive at the rendezvous. The Chancellor hears it from me, not from a comm channel that half the Klingon fleet is monitoring. Aye, Captain. Kirk settled into the chair. 14 hours. 14 hours to the neutral zone, to Kronos 1, to the Chancellor and Kavath, and the diplomatic mission that everyone believed was about peace, and that Kirk now knew was about survival. The Enterprise flew on. In the medical bay, a woman with no name and a choice she had never been allowed to make was staring at the ceiling and learning what it felt like to be awake. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. The Rendezvous. Part 1. Battlestar Galactica. CIC, 0347 hours. The contact appeared at the edge of Doradus at 3:47 in the morning. Duala saw it first, a single return, faint, sitting at the extreme limit of the sensor envelope, bearing 184. It was a ghost of a signal, moving on a vector that paralleled the fleet's formation without closing. Colonel. Contact, she said. Single return, bearing 184. Passive Dradus only. It's not pinging us. Saul Tigh was at the plot table in 4 seconds. He hadn't been sleeping. He had been running the consumption reports at the duty station, grinding through the numbers that kept the fleet alive. The transition from administration to combat was instantaneous. The physical reflex of a man who had spent 40 years expecting the worst and being proven right. Classification: unknown, sir. Signature is inconsistent. It's not matching Colonial, Federation, or Klingon profiles in the database. Kai stared at the Dreadis display. The contact flickered at the threshold of detection, a whisper of electromagnetic return. It could be sensor noise, it could be a piece of debris, or it could be the thing he had been waiting 23 days to see. Set condition 1 throughout the fleet, Tigh ordered. Launch the alert Vipers. Get me Commander Adama on the Pegasus and Captain Patel on the Norway. The CIC erupted. The Condition 1 klaxon began its rhythmic, two-tone pulse through the Galactica's corridors. The sound that every colonial in the fleet recognized in their bones. The sound that meant they had been found. Within 90 seconds, the ship was at battle stations. Within 3 minutes, the first Vipers were clearing the launch tubes. Starbuck's voice crackled over the wireless. Galactica, Starbuck. I have the lead section. Give me a vector. Galactica, Starbuck. Bearing 184, range uncertain, Ty replied. The contact is at the edge of Dradis. Approach with caution. We don't know what it is. Copy. Galactica. Moving to intercept. On the plot table, Starbuck's cap section. 4 Vipers, 2 Mark 6 and 2 of Tyrol's patched Mark 6, accelerated toward the contact's last known position. Behind them, Lee's Pegasus was launching her own alert fighters, the heavier Mark 6 that Kane's shipyard had produced before her death. The Norway, Saratoga, and Monitor went to their own version of battle stations. Patel's voice came through on the joint frequency, calm, professional, carrying the steady authority of a man who had trained for this. Galactica, Norway, we are at yellow alert. Our sensors are extending to maximum range on the bearing you've identified. We are not detecting the contact on our own arrays. Kai noted this. Federation sensors were superior to Colonial Dradis in every measurable respect. Longer range, higher resolution, better discrimination. If the Norway couldn't see it, and Galactica could, the contact was operating on a signature the Federation sensor profiles weren't calibrated to detect. A Cylon signature. Norway, Galactica. Understood, Ty said. The contact may be operating on frequencies your sensors aren't tuned to. We are forwarding our Dradis profile data to your tactical officer now. Galactica, Norway. Receiving. We'll integrate and rescan. Adama's voice entered the channel from Pegasus CIC. Galactica, Pegasus Actual. I have the tactical picture. What are we looking at, Sol? 1 contact, Bill. Edge of Dradis. Not closing. Not withdrawing. Just sitting there. The silence on the channel carried the heavy weight of 2 men who had fought silence for a year and who both understood what a single contact at the edge of sensor range meant. It meant someone was looking at them, measuring them, counting their ships, mapping their formation, noting the response time, and observing the Federation escorts. Hold Condition 1, Adama said. Let Starbuck run the intercept. If it's still there when she arrives, we reassess. And if it's gone, then we know what it was. And we know they know where we are. Starbuck's section reached the bearings 7 minutes later. The contact was gone. Dradis was clean. The space where the return had flickered was empty. No debris, no residual energy signature, nothing. Whatever had been there had departed on a vector that left no trace. Galactica, Starbuck. There's nothing here, she reported. Radis is clean across the board. Whatever it was, it's gone. Copy, Starbuck. Return to say P formation. The fleet held Condition 1 for another 40 minutes. The Norway completed its integrated rescan and confirmed nothing. The contact had been real. Doradus returns don't fabricate themselves, but it had left behind exactly the amount of information the Colonials needed to know they were being watched, and not enough to know by whom. Ty stood at the plot table as the fleet stepped down to Condition 2. He looked at the clean, empty Doradus display showing their formation of 63 ships holding station in contested space, surrounded by 3 Federation escorts and 2 battlestars and absolutely nothing else. He did not believe the nothing. He had never believed nothing. Maintain Condition 2, he ordered. Double the cap rotation and get me a channel to Captain Patel. I want the Norway's integrated sensor profile locked into our Doradus permanently. If that contact comes back, I want to see it on both arrays simultaneously. Yes, sir. Kai went back to the consumption reports. The numbers had not changed. The fleet was still burning fuel to hold station. The Tylium reserves were adequate, and the water recycling was at 81%. But the nothing at bearing 184 had changed everything, and both he and Adama knew it. Part 2. USS Enterprise A. Officers' Corridor. 0800 hours. Kirk found McCoy in the corridor outside the officers' mess at 800 hours, carrying a coffee and wearing the expression of a man who had been awake for longer than he wanted to admit. Bones. How is she? Physically, she's stabilizing, McCoy grumbled, falling into step beside him. The synthetic pathways are still dormant. Mabenga and I aren't reactivating them until Spock maps that damn kill signal so we can block it. But she's awake. She's eating. Asked for a second bowl of the soup. And otherwise? McCoy stopped. The long, clean lines of the Constitution-class refit stretched ahead of them. Otherwise, Jim, she's processing. You and Spock cracked her open. She nearly got murdered by her own people, and now she's sitting there turning the whole universe over in her head. She asked me what the soup was called. What? The broth. She asked if it had a name. I told her it was my grandmother's recipe and didn't have a formal designation. She sat with that for a while, and then she told me she's never had a thing that didn't have a model number. A thing that just exists because someone made it. Kirk walked in silence. She's thinking about the name question. She's thinking about everything. But there's something else. McCoy's expression flattened into a hard defensive line. Sarek is sitting with her. Kirk paused. Sarek, the ambassador, yes. Walked into the isolation ward at 0600 this morning. Didn't announce himself, didn't ask permission, just walked in, sat down in my chair, Jim, the one I put there for visitors, and he is sitting there right now, meditating, in silence. Has she said anything to him? Not a word. And he hasn't spoken either. The ambassador is conducting his own quiet diplomacy with a woman who doesn't even know she's being diplomated at. She thinks he's just a Vulcan who wandered in, doing whatever Vulcans do when they sit in rooms with people who are processing existential crises. But I'll tell you what, she looked calmer after he arrived than she's looked since we brought her aboard. Kirk processed this. Sarek made decisions based on assessments of high diplomatic sophistication. Sitting with the prisoner was a statement to himself. Sarek had concluded the woman in that room was worth his attention. Bones, leave him there, don't interfere. If she asks who he is, tell her the truth. If she doesn't ask, let the silence do what silence does. I wasn't going to interfere, Jim. I just thought you should know. The turbolift doors opened onto the bridge, and Kirk stepped in. Jim, McCoy called out, and Kirk turned. She's going to be all right. She's tougher than she looks. They usually are, Bones, Kirk said as the doors closed. Part 3. USS Enterprise A, bridge. Kirk walked onto the bridge. The air was cool and carried the quiet, professional rhythm of a crew that had served together so long they communicated through proximity. Sulu sat at the helm, his hands making microscopic adjustments to the sublight vectors. Chekhov bent over the navigation display, bathed in the pale blue light of the readouts. At the communication station, Uhura stood with one hand pressed to her earpiece, filtering the static of the neutral zone. It was the absolute focused piece of a veteran bridge before the storm. Spock stood at the science station and turned as Kirk entered. Captain, we are 14 minutes from the neutral zone boundary. Long-range sensors are detecting a vessel on approach from the Klingon side. Katinga class, bearing 271 Mark 6, accompanied by an escort of 5 smaller vessels. The configuration is consistent with a diplomatic convoy. Kronos 1. Confirmed, Captain. The Chancellor's ship, with an escort wing that includes 4 birds of prey bearing house markings consistent with House Morek. Kirk noted without visible reaction that Kavath had committed his house's assets to the mission. Time to rendezvous? At present approach speeds, approximately 47 minutes, Spock answered. The Klingon convoy is decelerating to match our arrival at the designated coordinates. Kirk sat in the center seat, feeling the warm leather under his hands. The view screen showed the warp field decaying as Sulu brought the Enterprise down to sublight. Mr. Sulu, drop to impulse at the neutral zone boundary. Standard approach, full protocol. Aye, Captain. Commander Uhura, open the channel to Kronos 1 when we are within standard communication range, Kirk ordered. Announce our arrival and request permission to approach for the formal reception. Aye, Captain. Kirk turned to Spock, who stood with composed stillness, indicating the focused internal processing of a mind running multiple analyses. Spock. Your father is in the medical bay. I am aware, Captain. He's sitting with the prisoner. I am aware of that as well. Kirk waited, but Spock did not elaborate. The silence between them carried the texture of a conversation navigating Spock's complicated relationship with his father. The Chancellor will want to meet her, Kirk said. That is a logical assumption, Spock replied. The Chancellor's decision to pursue peace was based in part on the intelligence Captain Kavath provided regarding the Cylon threat. A first-hand source would significantly strengthen the Chancellor's negotiating position within his own government. She's not a bargaining chip, Spock. No, Captain. She's a person who has made a choice. That choice and the intelligence it produced are diplomatically significant. The two facts are not in conflict. Kirk looked at the view screen, where the stars had shifted to the fixed points of real space. The Enterprise had crossed into the neutral zone, the space between empires where rules of engagement were written in treaties. Mr. Chekhov, confirm position. Neutral zone, Captain. Coordinates match the designated rendezvous point. We are in position. Red alert on my mark. Not yet. I want the Klingons to see us arrive at standard readiness, Kirk stated. We go to red alert after the formal reception, once I've spoken with the Chancellor privately. Understood, Captain. The bridge waited as Kronos 1 approached with 4 birds of prey at her flanks. Part 4. USS Enterprise A. Transporter room. 40 minutes later. 40 minutes later, the Klingon delegation materialized on the transporter pad in a column of amber light. The Chancellor arrived first. A large man in dark robes, with a patient authority, his face weathered and eyes sharp. His posture was diplomatic in form, but martial in the rigidity of the spine beneath it. He was a warrior who had never fully retired. Beside him stood Kavath, Kirk felt a sense of recognition seeing the Klingon captain in his dark command armor of House Morik, his bat'leth secured across his back. Kavath was thinner than Kirk remembered, looking compressed, like a man carrying more than was comfortable. Behind them stood 4 armed senior aides surveying the room. Kirk stepped forward to observe formal protocol. Chancellor, on behalf of the United Federation of Planets and Starfleet Command, I welcome you aboard the Enterprise. It is my honor to serve as your escort to the Kitoma Conference. The Chancellor studied him with an unhurried assessment. Captain Kirk, I have heard a great deal about you from my military advisor. He nodded toward Kavath. And from the reports of your actions in the Arcanist sector, you exceeded your authority. And in doing so, you may have altered the course of 2 civilizations. Kirk met his gaze. With respect, Chancellor, I did what any officer would do when confronted with people who needed help. No, Captain. You did what very few officers would do. That is why we are here. The Chancellor deliberately extended his hand, a human greeting performed as an act of cultural bridge building. Kirk took the firm hand. Captain Kavath has spoken well of you, Captain Kirk, the Chancellor said. He tells me you are a man who acts before the bureaucrats finish debating. I find this quality admirable. It is a Klingon quality, even if you are not Klingon. I'll take that as a compliment, Chancellor. It is one. Sarek entered the transporter room in his deep blue and silver Vulcan diplomatic robes, followed closely by Talora. 3 human diplomatic aides from Earth entered behind them. The presence of both delegations created a dense political weight in the room. Chancellor, Sarek said with a measured cadence, I am Ambassador Sarek of Vulcan, Chief Negotiator for the Federation delegation. It is my honor to greet you and to express the Federation's gratitude for your willingness to pursue this dialogue. The Chancellor faced Sarek, the 2 men regarding each other with mutual respect. Ambassador Sarek, your reputation precedes you, the Chancellor stated. I am told you brokered the Corridon admission, a negotiation that many believed impossible. The negotiation was not impossible, Chancellor. It was merely difficult, Sarek replied. I have found that the word impossible is most often used by people who have not yet attempted the task. The Chancellor smiled a thin, controlled expression. I begin to understand why Captain Kirk selected you for this mission. Captain Kirk did not select me, Chancellor. His first officer did. That is a distinction I find relevant. The Chancellor looked at Spock, who stood at attention with a neutral expression. A flicker of understanding passed between the Chancellor and the Ambassador regarding the unacknowledged relationship between the 2 Vulcans. I see, the Chancellor said quietly. Yes, I believe this will be a productive conversation. Part 5, USS Enterprise A, observation deck, 30 minutes later. 30 minutes later, Kirk watched from the observation deck as the 4 birds of prey broke formation from Kronos 1 at 1420 hours. The maneuver was the disciplined geometry of warships executing a planned withdrawal. They aligned toward Klingon space, their House Morik hull markings visible before their cloaking devices engaged, and the ships vanished into nothing. The logic was sound. 5 armed Klingon warships loitering during a peace conference was a provocation, and their mission to deliver the Chancellor safely was complete. The escort was no longer required. Kavath stood 3 meters to Kirk's left, his hands clasped behind his back. As the last ship vanished, Kavath smiled. It was a brief, precise fraction of a movement. A slight easing of the tension around the eyes, the look of a man who had watched a piece lock into place on a board only he could see. Kirk saw the smile. He looked at the empty space where the Klingon warships had been. He said nothing. Some trust was better expressed through silence. He filed the detail away, knowing exactly when not to ask a question. They stood at the viewport, and then Kirk turned toward the officers' mess, having a conversation to deliver. Part 6, USS Enterprise A, Officers' Mess. Private alcove. Kirk waited until the formal reception had settled into its first phase before finding Kavath in a private alcove in the officers' mess. The Klingon was standing near the viewport with an untouched glass, watching the stars. Kirk approached without briefing material. Kavath. The Klingon turned, his dark, steady eyes finding Kirk's, relaxing slightly with the recognition that he did not need to perform for this man. Captain Kirk, walk with me. They moved to the private alcove designed for senior officers to conduct unheard conversations. Kirk sat, and Kavath assessed the space for exits and sightlines before sitting across from him. You did not bring me here to discuss the reception, Captain. No. Kirk leaned forward, keeping his voice low. Kavath, I have intelligence that the peace conference is going to be attacked. Kavath set his glass down with controlled precision. Tell me. We have a Cylon prisoner aboard, captured during the Faru Sadine engagement, Kirk began. Over the past weeks, my officers and I have been talking to her, not interrogating, talking. 2 days ago, someone tried to kill her remotely. A signal was broadcast on a frequency that matched her synthetic neural architecture. My doctor saved her. And after you saved her, she talked, Kavath said. She chose to talk, Kirk corrected. She told us that the Silent civilization has fractured. There are two lines operating independently. The one that tried to kill her, the Ones, despises organic life. The other, the Threes, has been making contact with the Klingon war party, with Chang. Kirk paused before delivering the accusation. Kavath, General Chang has coordinated with the Threes for an operation against this peace conference. The Cylon ships will provide a combat distraction, an assault on the convoy, while Chang's forces move against the Chancellor. Kavath sat perfectly still, processing information that confirmed his fears. How certain are you? The prisoner's intelligence is consistent with the signal analysis my science officer performed, Kirk explained. The kill signal originated from a different Cylon source than the ships the Threes operate. 2 lines, 2 agendas. The prisoner was explicit. Whatever the Threes promised Chang, they will not honor the agreement. They will not provide controlled cover for his operation. They will provide maximum violence. Kavath looked at the fixed, indifferent stars in the viewport. Captain, I need to hear you say what you are saying. Directly, Kirk met his gaze. General Chang is going to try to kill the Chancellor. He is using Cylon military assets to create the opportunity. And the Cylons he is using are more dangerous than he understands. Kavath was quiet. I have known, he said. Not this, not the specifics, but I have known that Chang would move. I have known since the council chamber. I saw it in his eye, the look of a man who has decided that the institution he serves is wrong, and that he alone can correct it. You knew and you came anyway. I came because the Chancellor asked me to come. And I will not abandon that path because a general has lost his way, Kavath replied. Kirk nodded. I brought this to you because the Chancellor needs to hear it through his chain. Kirk to Kavath, Kavath to the Chancellor. That is the order of trust he built. Kavath inclined his head, and I will honor it. I will speak with him privately, aboard Kronos 1. He will need to absorb this, and he will need to decide how to respond without the pressure of an audience. Take whatever time you need. Kavath stood, giving Kirk a direct assessment. Captain, the wine conversation on this ship. You asked me why I was willing to risk my lineage on a peace I was not certain would hold. Do you remember my answer? You said because the alternative is a war that never ends. And I have seen what that does to the children who inherit it. Yes. Kavath paused. Chang has no children, Captain. He has never had a family. He has only ever had the Empire. And a man who has only ever had one thing will burn the world to keep it. Kavath turned and walked out, carrying the intelligence that would determine the Chancellor's fate. Kirk sat alone, looking at the stars. Somewhere beyond them, a Cylon fleet was preparing to jump. A cloaked bird of prey was waiting for a signal, and the Chancellor was about to learn of Chang's betrayal. Kirk finished his cold coffee. He had work to do. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, The Forge, Part 1, Battlestar Galactica, Hangar Deck, 0630 hours. The first Federation engineer arrived on the hangar deck at 0630 hours with a diagnostic scanner and no appointment. Lieutenant Commander Asha Reyes, the Norway's senior structural engineer, was a compact woman whose dark hair was pulled into a severe regulation bun, her calloused hands speaking of a life spent inside heavy hull plating rather than behind a desk. She had been aboard the Galactica for 2 hours for a routine technical exchange authorized by Captain Patel following the DR Disc Ghost contact. The official mandate was sensor integration, locking Federation detection profiles into colonial Dradis arrays to synchronize their tactical tracking. Reyes had finished the sensor work in 40 minutes. She spent the remaining 80 walking the belly of the beast. She walked the claustrophobic corridors, noting the heavy hull patches, field repairs layered 3 and 4 generations deep, each one a jagged scar from a battle or blowout fixed with desperate improvisation rather than proper protocol. She walked the engineering decks, staring up at the FTL drive, an enormous, brutalist monolith of machinery operating on violent physics her academy training had never touched, which she intended to study as long as they let her. She walked the crew decks, absorbing the fraying wear and the stubborn maintenance that kept a dying Leviathan breathing. Then she walked onto the hangar deck, saw the Vipers and stopped. They sat in shadowed maintenance rows under the harsh glare of halogen floodlights, 23 Mark IIs and 17 Mark VIs. The Mark VI were newer, their aggressive lines cutting through the dark. The Mark VI was something else entirely. They were old, scarred war dogs. Their hull plating was a chaotic patchwork of original armor, field-cut scrap, and composite overlays applied and reapplied until the original geometry was buried under layers of survival. And, Reyes noted with the cold precision of a structural engineer, They were on the edge of breaking. The wing root joints on at least 4 Mark IIs showed visible stress fracturing, hairline cracks radiating like spiderwebs from the mounting bolts, a classic metal fatigue propagation. Under standard flight, they were stable. Under the violent, high-G kinetic load of a dogfight, they would propagate. The wing would tear clean off the fuselage, and the pilot would die in the dark. Reyes was standing in the shadows beneath Viper Tail number N7242C, running a scanner along the port wing route when a voice cut through the hum of the deck. "Can I help you, Lieutenant Commander?" She turned. Chief Petty Officer Galen Tyrell stood 3 meters away, arms crossed, his face a mask of grease and territorial hostility. "Chief Tyrell, I'm Asher Reyes, Structural Engineering, Norway. I know who you are," Tyrell said, his voice flat. "You were on my deck for the sensor integration. That's done. Why are you still here?" Reyes held up the scanner, the blue light catching the shadows. "Because 4 of your Mark IIs have stress fractures in the wing root composites that will propagate to catastrophic failure under sustained combat loads. And because the composite material you're using for the repairs doesn't have the tensile strength to arrest the propagation, you're patching cracks with material that will crack." Tyrell's arms remained locked. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted, the exhausted look of a man who had known a terrible secret for months and was waiting for someone to finally confirm it.
Tell me something I don't know, Lieutenant Commander.
"I can fix it." "With what?" Reyes pulled a sample strip from her kit. A thin, flexible sheet of material that gleamed with a faint, iridescent defiance under the halogen lights. "Uranium composite laminate," she said. "Standard Starfleet hull reinforcement. Tensile strength approximately 400% greater than your current overlay. Flexible enough to conform to the wing route. Bondable with your tools, your equipment, your deck. I don't need to take the birds back to the Norway. I can do this here." Tyrell uncrossed his arms. He took the strip. He bent it, holding it up to the harsh light, running a grease-stained thumb along the edge to feel the grain with the tactile instinct of a mechanic who only trusted what he could touch. 400%. Minimum. Tests close to 600 in a lab. But I'm not promising lab conditions on a hangar deck.
You brought this with you?
I brought a field fabrication kit. I can print enough laminate to reinforce all 4 compromised routes in 6 hours. Call it 18 hours if you want the other Mark IIs done as preventive maintenance. Tyrell looked at the strip, then at N7242C, and finally at the woman who had walked onto his deck and offered him the one material he needed to keep his people alive. "Chief," Reyes said, her voice lowering into the ambient noise of the deck, "I'm not here to redesign your birds. They're good ships, the engineering is sound. I'm here because I saw a problem I can solve, and where I come from, engineers don't walk past problems they can solve." Tyrell handed the strip back. "Start with N7242C. She's Starbuck's bird. If the fix holds under Starbuck, it'll hold under anything." Part 2. Battlestar Pegasus. Flight deck. 0700 hours. The Saratoga's engineering team arrived on the Pegasus 30 minutes later, bringing considerably more noise. Lieutenant Commander Dmitry Koskov led the charge, a broad-shouldered mountain of a man with a heavy Urals accent and a thick beard pushing Starfleet regulations to the breaking point. He brought 4 engineers, 2 heavy fabrication kits, and the aggressive energy of a man who knew the Norway was already working on the Galactica and refused to be outdone. Commander Leodama met them on the flight deck. He was more formal than his father, careful with the diplomatic boundaries of Allied forces, but fundamentally he was a pilot, and pilots treated engineers the way infantry treated medics. They kept you alive, so you gave them the deck. "Lieutenant Commander Koskov, welcome aboard the Pegasus." "Commander Adama, permission to assess your Mark 7 maintenance status. I understand your birds have been operating without a proper maintenance yard for some time." 14 months. Koskov's eyebrows shot up. 14 months of combat operations without a yard. Starfleet doctrine would classify every airframe on this ship as a flying coffin. The fact that they were airborne wasn't maintenance, it was a sheer act of physical defiance. "Then we have work to do, Commander, with your permission." "Granted. One condition." "Sir, you work with my people, not around them," Lee said, his voice hard. "Every modification is reviewed by my crew before it touches an airframe. These ships belong to colonial pilots. They meet colonial standards." Koskov grinned like a man handed a loaded weapon. "Understood, Commander. We wouldn't have it any other way." He turned to his team. 14 months without a yard. "Let's see what we're dealing with." They flooded the flight deck like water finding cracks in stone. Within an hour, Saratoga engineers and Pegasus deck crew were standing shoulder to shoulder over exposed engine blocks, shouting over the ambient roar in a hybrid technical pidgin being invented in real time. Koskov went straight for the Mark 7 avionics. He stared at the colonial targeting array for a full minute, dissecting the violent simplicity of it. Hardwired optical tracking, manual override, no fire control computer, no automated solutions. Every shot was aimed by the pilot's hand and eye. Commander Adama, your pilots aim manually. Yes, no computer. No predictive tracking. We learned the hard way that networked computers are a vulnerability, Lee said darkly. The Cylons exploited our military network and shut down our fleet. Every ship that relied on automated targeting died in the first minutes of the war. Koskov absorbed the sheer paranoia of it. It was the most extreme cybersecurity doctrine he had ever seen. Kill the network before the enemy can weaponize it. We won't touch the targeting architecture, Koskov said instantly. Your doctrine is correct, but I can improve the optical resolution without adding networked components. Better glass, Commander. Better sensors feeding directly to the pilot's display. No computer in the loop. Just cleaner data for the same human eye. Lee looked at the heavy machinery. Show me. Part 3. Battlestar Galactica. Hangar deck. 1400 hours by 1400 hours. The unspoken war had begun. No one authorized it, but it flared up organically, driven by the ruthless professional pride of engineers who build things and refuse to be beaten by the ship next door. The comm chatter shifted from formal status updates to pointed, aggressive milestones. The Saratoga team reported a 30% improvement in Mark 7 optical resolution. Within the hour, the Norway team reported the first 2 Mark II wing routes reinforced, projecting a 40% structural tolerance boost. Saratoga fired back. Engine response time increased by 12%. Norway countered, reduced radar cross-section via duranium hull laminate. Tyrol and Koskov never met face-to-face. The work spoke for itself, carried by the intelligence of mechanics moving between the decks. Tyrol was in his element. The Norway engineers deferred to him because the blood and oil of the deck belonged to him. The institutional knowledge of these battered airframes lived exclusively in his head. He deferred to Reyes on material science. It was a seamless, wordless dance, pointing at a stress fracture, selecting a composited, reaching for the heavy tools in perfect synchronization. They were not redesigning the birds. Tyrol wouldn't allow it, and Reyes understood why. These were colonial machines built for colonial killers. Altering the flight envelope would put the pilots in the grave. Every fix was an improvement within the existing physics, stronger materials, better thermal handling, tighter tolerances. It was the exact same warbird, just reinforced with Federation armor. By mid-afternoon, Tyrol had completed 6 wing routes and moved to the massive engine mounts. In the corner, Reyes was fabricating duranium laminate, cutting the iridescent metal with the precision of an assassin. A grease-covered deckhand, Specialist Vygotsky, approached Reyes during a fabrication cycle. Lieutenant Commander, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why are you doing this? This isn't your war. These aren't your ships. You just showed up. Reyes looked at Vygotsky. The man was exhausted, running on fumes, holding a heavy wrench like it was an extension of his own arm. Specialist, where I come from, the Starfleet Engineering Corps has a saying, Reyes said, her voice cutting through the mechanical roar. It's not in the manual. If it flies, floats, or fights, and it's broken, fix it. Don't ask whose it is. Vygotsky stared at her. Then he handed Reyes a dented cup of the dark acidic sludge the Galactica called coffee. That's terrible coffee. Reyes choked out after one burning sip.
Yeah. It's all we've got.
It's perfect. They went back to the grind. Part 4. Battlestar Galactica. Hangar deck. 1800 hours. Starbuck hit the deck at 1800 hours. Helmet under her arm. Fresh off a mind-numbing CAP rotation of empty space. She was bored, which meant she was immediately looking for something to break. She found it instantly. Viper N7242C was not where she left it. It was dragged into the primary maintenance bay, its heavy armor stripped off, its guts exposed. A stranger was buried underneath it, burning sheets of alien metal into the wing roots. Tyrol intercepted her before she drew blood. Before you say anything, what is happening to my Viper chief? She's getting duranium composite laminate on the wing roots? Tyrol said quickly. Those stress fractures I warned you about, they're being arrested. Lieutenant Commander Reyes brought the material. The fix is structural. Your bird is going to hold. Starbuck looked at the stranger, then scanned the shadowed deck. 4 other Mark IIs were ripped open, Starfleet and Colonial grease monkeys working side by side in organized chaos. Is that the same material on Federation hull plating? A variant, Tyrol said. Lighter. 5 times stronger than anything we have. 5 times. Reyes says 400% minimum. Starbuck fell uncharacteristically silent. Tyrol watched her mind work. One of the few times Kara Thrace processed data before converting it into a violent action. How does it affect the flight envelope? It doesn't. Same weight, same geometry. She flies identical to what you know. She just doesn't break. And the engine mounts? Next. Norway Thermal Management Composites. Engine housing temperatures under full burn will drop by 15%. 15% means I can run the engines harder. It means you can run them harder for longer without melting them. Yes, Starbuck stared at N7242C. The ship that had dragged her out of the apocalypse. Through every brutal dogfight and screaming combat landing, she knew every violent vibration and micro-delay in that hull. Now, it was being rebuilt as a predator. When can I fly it? Reyes needs 2 hours for the cure. I can have her ready for a test flight at 0600. I want a full combat test, Starbuck demanded. Maximum Gs, sustained afterburner, combat maneuvering intensity. If this holds under my flying, it holds under anything. That's exactly what I told Reyes. Starbuck looked at Tyrell. A quiet, dangerous ghost of a smile crept onto her face. The look of an apex predator who had been flying on borrowed time and just got handed a loaded gun. Chief, tell the lieutenant commander if her fix works, I'm buying her a drink. It'll be terrible because everything on this ship is terrible, but it'll be the most sincere, terrible drink she's ever had. Starbuck stalked off the deck. Tyrell turned back to the bay. Reyes slid out from under the Viper, wiping industrial grease from her hands. Wing root cure is setting. Structural integrity projections holding at 420% improvement. The laminate bonded clean. My crew knows their birds. Yes, Chief, they do. Reyes looked at the scarred Mark II fortified with Federation steel. I heard the captain. About the drink. Starbuck doesn't offer drinks to people she doesn't respect. Reyes stared into the dark of the hangar. I've been in Starfleet engineering for 14 years. Constitution-class refits. Miranda shield generators. This is the most satisfying work I have ever done. Tyrell stood in the shadows, feeling the crushing, lonely weight of 14 months of solitary command finally lifting off his spine. Yeah, Tyrell rasped. Same. Part 5, Battlestar Pegasus, flight deck, 2100 hours. The Saratoga team did not sleep. By 2100 hours, Koskov's heavy engineers had overhauled the optics on 11 Mark VI IIs. The unnetworked displays now fed the pilots crystal clear, high-resolution data, analog in philosophy, digital in precision, as Koskov bragged. Then they ripped into the power distribution network. Colonial conduits were built with massive conservative tolerances. They could handle far more violence than the system allowed. Koskov's crew recalibrated the distribution ratios, ripping the throttle wide open on the energy pipeline. The result was a warbird that hit like a hammer. Weapons drew power faster, engines spooled up 12% quicker. Life support margins expanded, zero network vulnerability. Pure colonial kinetic doctrine, supercharged. Lee flew the first test in the black. He dumped the Mark VII out of the Pegasus tube at 2115 and felt the violence instantly. The engine response was razor sharp, tuned by a master. The weapons hit with a microsecond reduction in delay. He slammed the stick into a maximum G combat profile, sustained afterburners, extreme attack vectors. The bird didn't just hold, it screamed for more. He landed hot. Koskov was waiting in the heavy fumes of the flight deck, practically vibrating with anticipation. Well, Commander. Lee pulled his helmet off, staring at the perfectly unchanged exterior of a ship that was now a completely different monster on the inside. Lieutenant Commander Koskov, how many birds can your team complete by morning? Koskov's bearded grin split his face. If your deck crew bleeds with us through the night, all of them, Commander. Lee looked at his deck chief. The chief looked at Koskov. They both looked at the clock. All hands, Lee ordered, his voice echoing off the blast doors. Full maintenance cycle. Every Mark VII gets the Koskov treatment. We work through the night. The Pegasus deck erupted. Access panels were ripped off. Tools screamed over the roar of the ship. The absolute chaotic violence of a massive maintenance push filled the air. Two crews building a weapon against a clock ticking down to war. On the Galactica, Tyrell heard the comms chatter. The Pegasus was doing every single Mark VII. He turned to Reyes, his eyes burning with exhausted adrenaline. How many Mark IIIs can we do by morning? Chief, I've been waiting for you to ask me that. Both ships went to full operation. Into the dark. Part 6, Battlestar Galactica, Observation Gallery, 2300 hours. William Adama stood in the shadows of the observation gallery and watched his ship burn the midnight oil. Below him, the hangar was a living, breathing forge. Viper sat gutted under blinding floods. The grating vibrated with the shriek of fabrication tools and the heavy clash of metal. Tyrell was conducting the chaos, directing his crew and Starfleet engineers with absolute, unquestioned authority. The chief looked lighter. The crushing isolation of keeping the fleet alive alone had been replaced by the violent, focused energy of a man who finally had an army at his back. Adama watched Figursky and a Norway engineer bent over an access panel, their hands moving in perfect, blind synchronization, unaware of the uniforms they wore. He thought of the letter he wrote about trust, about patience being the price of arrival. This was arrival, not a planet, not a politician's ink on a treaty. It was two engineers bleeding over an engine block in the dead of night, solving a problem together that would have killed them apart. It was Reyes fixing a broken ship because she could. It was Tyrell handing a stranger his wrench. Adama stayed in the shadows. He issued no orders. The Admiral's job was to stand back and let the Alliance forge itself in the fire of the deck plates. In the morning, Starbuck would fly, but Adama already knew the armor would hold. He had seen Tyrell's face, and Tyrell's face never lied about a Viper below him. The forge roared into the night. 60 warbirds being sharpened for a slaughter they could all feel coming. End of chapter 10.